Hello, good afternoon. I have a quick update here on the DoorDash girl from TikTok. Let's get into it.
So today's the day. I've got my RTA mock system and Coyote appliances.
This TikToker has finally been indicted months after she went viral for recording an unconscious man in his own home, naked from the waist down. She uploaded the footage to TikTok where nearly 30 million people saw it. And then she called herself the victim.
I'm the one being punished. He's not getting in trouble with the police. He didn't lose his job if he has one. What's going on with him? Why am I getting fired? Why are my videos getting taken down, and why am I getting strikes? I'm about to lose my account. I was assaulted.
When?
I'm the victim.
Ma'am, you are not the victim. Go straight to hell. You are not the victim.
You see, Olivia Henderson, the TikToker here, claimed that this man sexually assaulted her during a DoorDash delivery. And that was even though he was completely unconscious the entire time. But when police investigated, they determined that no sexual assault occurred. And as a result of this whole thing, she ended up arrested and charged with 2 felonies. She pled not guilty, and then her case got transferred to county court. And for a long time, it all went quiet. But now, after months of this case sitting in what felt like legal limbo, DoorDash Girl has officially been indicted by a grand jury in Oswego County. And by the looks of it, the charges are exactly the same as what she was arrested for, which means the prosecution didn't water down a single thing. So in this video, we're going to talk about what the indictment means, what she's facing, and why this might signal that the DA is not necessarily messing around with this case. Let's get into it. Okay, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, since it has been a bit since our last video on the subject, let me first give you a quick recap of the case. This is Olivia Henderson. She is 23 years old from Oswego, New York. Back on October 12th, 2025, she was working as a DoorDash driver. And while working, she picked up a Wendy's order and delivered it to a customer in the city of Oswego. Apparently, that customer had selected the option to have his order left at the door. This is important for this case.
And my customer requested that their order be left at their front door. And when I arrived at their house, their front door was wide open, and they were within eyesight of the front door, laying on the couch, indecently exposed to me.
However, this conflicts with some reporting that's out there saying that the man actually has ring footage that shows her pushing the door open to see inside his home. And police would apparently later determine through their investigation that this man was incapacitated and unconscious due to alcohol consumption, and that therefore the assault couldn't even have happened in the first place. Now, a reasonable person walking into a situation like this where you have a customer that is unconscious on their couch, half naked, probably would have just set the food down and walked away.
Yeah.
And if the door was indeed open,
Yeah,
they may have just closed
just be like,
the door for the guy.
walk
maybe
away.
Even called someone to check in on him to make sure he was okay. But Henderson pulled out her phone and recorded him instead.
That's fucked up.
She then uploaded that video to TikTok with no censorship over his body, and she included his first name in the caption, not to mention the front of his house. And this video racked up nearly 30 million views before TikTok finally took it down. And then she uploaded it again before TikTok took it down once again.
You guys, my account is currently at risk of being banned because I had
It should be banned.
Time, right? They took the video
Your
down,
account
my
should
account is
be
striked.
banned.
So I explained my story again and censored the video that I have just so they can't take it down for the same reason. They took it down for the same reason again, and now my account has a second strike. Guess what? If I get one more strike, I'm banned from TikTok. So not only...
And she went on a TikTok campaign of sorts, claiming that this man sexually assaulted her. But here's something worth noting, which I have talked about in previous videos before. When she says that she was assaulted by the guy, she didn't go to the police first. Instead, she first uploaded to TikTok.
She went straight to TikTok.
To DoorDash
lying
second,
ass whore.
And she only went respond to the police after commenters on her viral video suggested that she should do it.
And they sent a police officer over to speak to me in person and watch the video that I have. And then he asked me to email it to him, and he asked me if I want to press charges, like what do I want to come from this.
And the sequence of events is potentially important. I would imagine that the prosecution is likely to put it in front of a jury so that they can understand that her allegations of sexual assault were not really legitimate, that she didn't have a good faith belief in them if the first place that she went to was TikTok as opposed to the police. Now, on top of that, DoorDash did respond to this whole situation. First, they banned the customer and Henderson. Then, because this incident went so viral, DoorDash actually put out their own statement about it on TikTok. There, they said that posting a video of a customer in their home and disclosing personal details publicly is a clear policy violation, and that was the only reason that her account was deactivated. But you know, Henderson was not happy about any of it. And the thing she seems to have been most upset about was the fact that she wasn't going to get paid for the views on the viral videos since they had been taken down by TikTok.
And they took down my video. They were gonna have to pay me for my second story time because that was over a minute long. They were gonna have to pay me for all those views I got. So no, they took that right down. They took that right down. Absolutely not. They're not paying me for that. Nope.
And that's something that is going to be probably important to show her intent in posting these videos in the first place. By the way, if you need help with a real legal issue in your life, contact us at the Bites Law Group at bites.law. We're partnered with firms all across the U.S. So if you go to the link in the description below, we can help you with quality representation in your jurisdiction. Anyway, as I was saying, I mentioned earlier that the Oswego City Police Department investigated Henderson's case. They said that they reviewed independent video evidence from the scene. And on top of that, the man apparently cooperated fully and gave a statement. So the police concluded through their investigation that the man was incapacitated and unconscious on his couch due to alcohol consumption, and that no sexual assault had occurred. So on November 10th, 2025, Henderson was arrested by the Oswego City Police Department for recording the man while he was naked and then uploading that recording to the internet. She was charged with 2 felonies. The first count was for unlawful surveillance. That's for the act of actually recording the man with her phone without his consent. And the second count was dissemination of an unlawful surveillance image. That's for the act of uploading that footage to the internet. Then, on December 4th, 2025, Henderson showed up at Oswego City Court for her arraignment, where she pled not guilty. After that, the case got transferred from Oswego City Court to Oswego County Court. And this is standard in New York for felony cases, as is the case in probably most states. In New York, city courts don't actually have jurisdiction to try felonies, only to do the most basic early appearances. That means that once it goes to a grand jury for an indictment, the case is automatically transferred to county court. So until that grand jury indictment, this case has kind of been in limbo between the two, although it seemed like it was being positioned to be transferred to county court. That said, for a while it was still very unclear to the public what was really going on until now. And so here's the big update. Olivia Henderson has now been officially indicted by a grand jury in Oswego County. As you can see from her docket here, her case is now listed in the Oswego County court system under an indictment case number. And the charges, let's take a look. As I mentioned before, they are the exact same charges that she was originally arrested for. You can see that count 1 is for dissemination of an unlawful surveillance image, which is Penal Code Section 250.60. And then there's count 2, which is unlawful surveillance brought under Penal Code Section 250.45 sub 01. So the prosecution has not diluted a thing. They didn't downgrade any charges, they didn't drop anything. They brought the exact same felonies to the grand jury. And the grand jury looked at the evidence that was presented to them and said, yep, there's enough evidence here. Proceed towards trial. So let's go over really quickly what a grand jury indictment actually is for anyone who isn't familiar. Similar to a jury that you see in a trial, a grand jury is a panel of people that are from the local community. And the job of a grand jury is to review the evidence from the DA's office and decide one simple question. Is there enough evidence to formally
Charge this person.
Now, unlike a regular trial, grand jury proceedings are actually not open to the public. In fact, typically it's just the prosecutor there presenting evidence to the grand jury. The defense usually doesn't participate at all. So really what that means is that the grand jury only hears one side of the case here. And that's one of the reasons why indictments are pretty notoriously easy to achieve. In fact, you've probably heard of the old saying that, if you really wanted to, you can indict a ham sandwich. So that's why it is important to note that even though, yes, she has been indicted here, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is enough evidence to convict her. Keep in mind that this is in fact a criminal case, which requires proof beyond reasonable doubt. And that is a much higher bar than what the grand jury had to decide on. Now, of course, based on the evidence that we do know that's out there and the charges themselves here in this particular case, it does seem like most of the evidence is probably actually available to the public, and there probably is enough to convict, in my opinion. But I did want to note the differences between the burdens of proof in an indictment versus a trial, because that is a huge difference between the two. However, the fact that the DA went through a full grand jury indictment here is worth paying attention to. You see, the DA also had another viable option available here, and that is called a superior court information, or an SCI. An SCI is basically a shortcut that would allow the prosecution to not need to put on a whole case in front of a grand jury. To do it, the defendant waives her right to a grand jury, and then the DA files a charging document. So basically the case moves forward without that extra step. Now, SCIs can be an indication that both sides are actively working more towards a plea deal as opposed to towards trial. That's because an SCI is much faster and simpler than a full grand jury indictment, and it does signal cooperation between the two sides. But here, it looks like the DA didn't go the SCI route. Instead, they took the time to present the case to a full grand jury. And that could mean that they are taking this case pretty seriously, which means they might be a little bit less willing to offer easy plea deals, maybe because they want to make an example here. Now, with that said, it is also totally possible that Henderson was in fact offered a plea deal before the indictment and that she turned it down. But if she did, I personally think that's a pretty foolish decision, because the odds of her getting a better plea offer post-indictment.
Tired of sifting through jobs that don't feel like the right fit? Introducing Indeed Career Scout. Find the job that's right for you.
Come on.
Because the odds of her getting a better plea offer post-indictment are pretty slim.
Yeah, they are.
The closer you get to trial, the less generous these offers tend to get. That is assuming, of course, that there isn't some sort of evidence that comes up that surprises everyone that is super beneficial to the defendant. Now, aside from that, some people might be wondering why this indictment took so long. I mean, the incident happened in October 2025. Then in November 2025, she was arrested. And now in April 2026, we are finally getting an indictment. So let's talk about that real quick. So under New York Criminal Procedure Law Section 30.30, the prosecution generally has 6 months to be ready for trial when a defendant is charged with a felony. And when a defendant isn't held in custody and isn't charged with a violent felony, the DA's office doesn't have additional restrictions within those 6 months to speed up that timeline. And that's the situation here. She's charged with 2 felonies, but neither of them are violent. And she hasn't been held in custody basically since her arrest. And so while the wait has probably been very frustrating for a lot of people who are eager to find out more about this case as it proceeds, it looks like it's actually well within the normal procedural timelines. And honestly, my guess is that this case was probably just sidelined for a period of time while the DA's office focused on maybe more urgent cases maybe involving violent felonies, for example, for a period of time while the DA's office knew that they were within the statutory window for this particular case. Okay, so let's talk about what she's actually looking at in terms of potential punishment now that she has been officially indicted. So both charges are Class E felonies. And under New York Penal Law Section 70.00, the maximum prison sentence for a Class E felony is 4 years. Because she has 2 of these charges, and because these charges are for 2 separate acts, one recording, one uploading, she could be looking at up to 8 years in prison if they run consecutively. And I know that a lot of people are really hoping that she gets the full 8 years, because what she did was
she should get the full 8.
This man was unconscious in his own home.
Right.
And he was in one of the most vulnerable states a person can be in. And in so many ways, footage that gets uploaded to the internet is forever. And honestly, a lot of people have probably rightly pointed out that if the genders were swapped in this particular case, there would be easy outrage across the board about the defendant's conduct. Instead of helping him or just doing her job and walking away, she recorded his naked body. And she put it on the internet for the entire world to see.
Yeah,
and what's
why?
Worse, probably
What was the purpose?
Evidence that is almost definitely going to be used again.
Better yet, in the words of Cardi B, what was the reason?
Her. She said at one point on the internet afterwards that her purpose in sharing the video.
Ooh, that's a new trouble I gotta find. What was the reason?
This is the only justice I'm getting, is exposing this man and having posted that video and it has gone viral. Like, now he can live with shame and embarrassment if people have seen it and knows who he is or where he, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the one being punished.
Again, you took a picture of a man while he was in the privacy of his own home, you lying heifer.
He's not getting in trouble with the police. He didn't lose his job if he has one. Like, what's going on with him? Why am I getting fired? Why are my videos getting taken down? And why am I getting strikes? Like, I'm about to lose my account. I was assaulted.
When?
I'm the victim. I lost my job.
Bitch, you was not the victim. You was the damn perpetrator. Miss me with that bullshit.
The victim. Right? Is this making sense to any fucking body?
And that's on top of what we said earlier about her seeming most upset about losing revenue from the viral videos that got taken down. She wanted those views, she wanted to get paid. So the intent to degrade and the intent to profit are both right there on camera coming out of her mouth. And that intent is really important for proving the case against her. So these admissions are incredibly damaging for her case. But all of that considered, here's the reality of sentencing. Henderson appears to have no prior criminal history. And to her credit, since her arrest, she's been fairly quiet on social media. She hasn't been making things worse for herself like many social media influencers who have run into legal trouble. And under New York law, the court has options beyond prison for sentencing. And those include probation and conditional discharge. So unless the DA and the judge really want to make an example out of her, there is a good chance that she'll probably get some form of probation. Do I personally love that result? No, but I'm simply looking at the reality of how these things tend to shake out.
Right.
But consider the fact that even if she does avoid prison, if she ends up with a felony conviction on her record, it does carry real consequences.
Yeah.
It can affect employment,
It does.
housing, professional licensing if she ever tries to pursue something like that, and a whole lot more. It follows you for a long time if you can't get it off your record. And personally, I think that she should face meaningful consequences. This wasn't some kind of innocent mistake. It was a series of deliberate choices. She chose to record it. And then she chose to upload it. And then she chose to monetize it. And then she chose to falsely accuse this man of sexual assault. And she chose to double down publicly. Every single one of
she
those
did.
choices was
Like a damn
self-serving
idiot.
and at someone else's expense. And the person who paid the price was a man who was passed out on his own couch in his own living room in his own home. People can debate all day and night about whether or not the door was open, how open it was, if it was open at all, yada, yada, yada. The fact of the matter is, she is not clearly in the clear here with her conduct. Anyway, so where does the case go from here? The county court docket shows that her next court appearance is scheduled for May 1st, 2026 at 9 a.m. It was originally set for April 20th, but that got rescheduled for, I don't know, some reason. So now there are a few possible paths that go from here. Path number one is one I've mentioned, it's a plea deal. Honestly, this would be the smartest move for her at this point, in my opinion. If she accepts responsibility now, she likely gets a more favorable outcome than going to trial and losing. Because honestly, the evidence here looks pretty clear cut for the prosecution, and I think that if this case goes to trial, it ends with a conviction. And on top of that, when
Yeah,
it
it should end with
judges
conviction.
also tend to look more favorably on defendants who take accountability.
Ooh, damn, I
Anyway,
didn't center
then there's
this.
path number two.
As I realized
Attorney
it.
could file a motion to dismiss the indictment. You can probably put two and two together here, but that is basically where the defense argues that the indictment should be thrown out entirely. Maybe they say that the evidence
How?
is insufficient. Maybe they argue some kind of a procedural defect. But given the evidence, like I said, I think that is a very uphill battle. She made the video, she posted it, she talked about it, she posted it extensively on the internet to everyone, to the public, to the world. So trying to attack this indictment doesn't seem like the most successful route. Anyway, then there's path number three. If there's no plea deal and no successful motion to dismiss the indictment, then this case proceeds to discovery and eventually to trial. And you know, in my last video on this topic, I talked about how one of two things would probably happen here. Either she goes through some
With AI, you don't need to use Kling, Runway, or CapCut. You can generate the desired video direct.
some difficult character development and eventually decides to take a deal, or she digs in until the very end and almost certainly gets convicted with a harsher sentence. And so
Yep.
it seems like we are probably about to find out fairly soon which of these two paths she chooses.
Yes, you're
And I,
about
for
F
one,
around
will
and
be
find
watching
out.
very closely. Until then, the way I see it, this could end up going either way, but at the moment it looks like things are moving forward towards trial. In my opinion, her best move at this point is to take a plea deal if
Yeah,
one is
take a
offered.
plea deal,
Going to trial with
do a
this
year,
mountain of
go on
self-incriminating
probation.
evidence just seems like a terribly losing strategy. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you think she might take a plea deal and actually accept responsibility for what she did here? Or do you think that she's going to keep digging her heels in and take this all the way to trial? And do you think that she deserves prison time, or is probation the right call here? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this, or at least found it interesting or informative. And if you did, I would love it if you could hit the like button. It does help us with the YouTube algorithm.